All right, so I'm going to cover some of the key features that are being released in the 2023 R1, which is the current release, which is being rolled out currently, and the 2020 R2, which is available to most of you already, and we will take it from there. So we are very excited about the releases that happen, and I'm just going to go through a brief run through and then hop straight into a demo for you. All right, so I will be covering some of the 2023 releases, which include the delegation and reassignment of approvals. These can be applied to general approvals and as well as expense claims. I'll go through some of the mixed order types, which allows us to do a sale and a return in the same document. So eliminating unnecessary documents and steps, which is great and helpful. Okay. I will also explain how the business events are evolving and how we can trigger a business event from an action of another screen. I'll talk about some of the Teams integration, which is a bit of an experimental function or feature that's being introduced, and how it can help your business and get your integration from your team and get them excited about working in MYOB. From the 22 releases, I'm going to talk about some of the Shopify enhancements that have happened, and these would include some of things like being able to send orders from Shopify directly to from MYOB directly to Shopify. We talk about the approvals on the GL transactions, a new generic inquiry called our inventory turnover, which allows us to calculate our turnover of stock over a period, and the conversion of stock status, so moving stock from a stock item to a non-stock item, and why we would want to do these kind of things. And then we would discuss some of the new features that are being rolled out in the payroll and what they're entailing. Right, so I'm going to hop into my demo. So here I've got my demo site. Okay, and we're going to start off with the delegation and reassignment of approvals. So here we have a standard purchase order, and we want to initiate now an approval process on that. So when I look at my approval map for my purchase orders, sorry, give me a second, it was just loading up there. And I look at my approval map. I've got a simple approval, and I open this approval map up, and my approval map says that anything over $5,000 should be approved. Okay. I have now a new checkbox within this approver which says, do I allow the reassignment of approvals? So over here, I can see that this particular step does allow for this reassignment, and I can then specify that James on this particular step is allowed to reassign that approval. I can have multiple approval steps. Each can then be allowed or disallowed depending on the approval type. Okay. So let's take this into action. If I go to my purchases, I open my purchase order. And just open my, okay. Alrighty, I'm just going to put it back onto hold. And I can see that my order is over the threshold that was specified in my approval map. And I now want to take it off hold, and I can see that it goes through an approval process. Now we've got a simple approval saying that James needs to be the approver, and I now have the option of going reassign. The reassign option gives me a little pop-up menu, and it says to me, who do I want to assign to this approval? And I can go in and use the magnifying glass, and I can select a new approver. So in this instance, I want to assign Michael to it. And then I have an additional checkbox which says, do I want to ignore the approver's delegations? So if this is ticked, then Michael will be the only approver. If that condition can't be met, when I click on reassign, it will then prompt me to say, this person can't be used, please select another user. If the ignore delegations is unchecked and I do reassign and Michael no longer becomes available, any persons that are under him, any delegates under Michael will then go through and be reassigned to this. Okay. When I click on reassign, the new approvers person is associated to this approval. And when I look at my approvals, I now have an additional tab which shows me reassigned approvals. All right, so I can see there is the approver for that particular item that I've purchased or that purchase order. I do also, under my profile, have the ability to set delegates and when they want to be approved. So under my delegate option, I have a new feature where I can specify I want to do the delegation of approvals or expense receipts and claims. And I can specify that it's going to be active for a specific staff member from and to a date. And that will then also take into consideration any new purchase orders that get created or any new approvals where I am the approver. Okay. The same applies to expenses. I can specify that any expenses get assigned to a specific person as well. All right. Okay. In MYOB, we have introduced a new sales order type called a mixed order type, and that will be available under the order types menu, and it will need to be enabled or made active. What this will do is it will allow you to do a sale and a return in the same document and prevent all of the additional documents and processes that need to be enabled or that would generally happen in a normal return and sale process. So here I've got my mixed order, and same with most of our order types, we do have a whole bunch of settings that are applicable that can be enabled, and I would have to go in and make this particular order type active. Once I've done that, I can go in and create an order type. Okay, so I'm going in and I have pre-configured a sales order with no lines, but I have created the order and the detail. And I can go in and start assigning or start doing what the customer has asked us. So my example, the customer is going to return a particular item and purchase another item at the same time. So I click on add item. Sorry, give it a sec, it's just thinking it. Okay. And let's say I'm going to add in a Bluetooth mouse or a mouse. Okay. Alrighty. When I select it and I now go in and have the quantity put in, I can now change this quantity to a positive or a negative, depending on whether the item is being purchased or refunded or returned. And what this will do is it will update the operation. So when I select a negative here, my operation is changed to receipt. And when it's a positive, it's going to do an issue. We would have seen the operation in an RMA order type, but now what it's going to allow me to do is process this all in a single order. So I'm going to add in an issue and a receipt on the same type of order. Okay. And I'm going to do a positive and a negative. And what it does is when it calculates the order that is due to be paid or refunded, what will happen is under my payments option, I am then specified to either create a refund if it is a negative value, Or if I go back in and I change it the other way around so that it's a positive value, MYOB will then say, hang on, you need to create a payment. Okay. When I process this, it's not going to take me through a shipment process, and it's just going to process the actual payment through. So there's no longer the need to create the receipt, the credit memo, bring it all back in, and then do the sale. It now all does it in a single document, and I can process the payment and or the refund directly on the same document. Business events are evolving in the system, and they're becoming really useful in getting rid of some of the mundane day-to-day tasks that we do, and may not necessarily be something that we want to action every time. Previously, you could trigger an action based on a generic inquiry, but now we are allowing it to be on a input screen. So if I navigate to my business events, okay, I don't want to say that. Okay, I've created a business event here already, just to speed up the process a little bit. And this business event, I am using my cases screen, so my support type thing. Anybody tracking cases or using cases will be very familiar with the screen. But now I am specifying that on an action within the cases screen, I want to do something. So here I've specified that on the close action within the cases screen, I want the system to do something for me. Okay. Previously, we would have had here only on schedule or on change. So it's now introducing that action. When I go to my subscribers, I can then specify under a new create subscriber an additional action. And again, I have pre-set up one, but here I can go in and say that on my cases screen, I'm wanting another action to happen. And what is that action? I wanted to run my billing against an internal appointment. So I've done all the work and I want MYOB to go in and run the internal billing. So again, I would select my action screen and what action that is applicable to that screen that I've selected. So in this instance, it's my appointment screen, and I can see a whole bunch of different actions that are applicable to that screen. So in this one, I state that I wanted it to run my billing, and then it asks me for a couple of keys that I would have to fill in, and that's obviously related to the appointment screen. And it said that I want to now do this action. So every time I click on close, it's now going to go in and run the billing against this particular service or appointment. Okay. All right. The next item that I'd like to sort of talk about, it is still in a bit of an experimental feature, but it will greatly improve the way that your team interacts with MYOB and recording of our integrations that we have with different outlooks and teams. So if I navigate to my cases or my support and my cases, here we generally have a lot of interaction with our team members and the way that they are interacting with the customers. And we want to be able to create a message from within the MYOB environment to alert a specific team member that there is an action for them to do. With this experimental feature, we can now start using teams, which a lot of us are familiar with and use every day, to be actioned within the MYOB environment. So I am going to open up my case. Okay. And I start to see some icons next to my contacts and my owners of the case. I don't currently have this active on a live Azure platform, but these icons over here will show me the status of my team and be able to do a Teams chat. And those Teams chats also get recorded under the activities. So under my activities, I will have a list of all of those functions and all of those messages that I have sent out based on my chats with my staff members. Okay. I'm just going to hop to another slide that has my Teams into my Shopify. Okay, so Shopify is also constantly evolving. We are always bringing through new ideas, and we're trying to get these more involved in our day-to-day, because we also want an online presence and we want to be able to sell our goods. We want the customer that logs into Shopify to be able to see all of their details. Here we have introduced a couple of features, not limited to these ones, but if I look at my order settings, I now have the ability to export particular orders to our Shopify site. I can specify one or multiples. And this will allow the user to be able to view all of their orders. So if an order had been placed directly with a business and captured directly in MYOB, I can now sync that order back to my Shopify site. If an order was created in MYOB and synced with Shopify, and that customer hadn't necessarily been created as yet, that order that gets synced will then create that customer in Shopify as well. So it's now starting to do a lot more integration between the two systems. We also have introduced multiple guest accounts now. So I have a function over here, or a feature, that enables the use of multiple guest accounts. Okay. Previously, we would only send to one guest account, and this sometimes caused a bit of delay or sort of a lag on opening this, especially if there were a lot of transactions happening between a guest account. If the site was offering only to Shopify customers that had logged in and created it, then this may not be applicable. But if you're using a lot of guest sales and not recording those sales, the ability to have multiple guest accounts and not be bogged down with this huge one account with massive amounts of sales. Okay. A lot of the integration has changed, and you'll be able to now create custom apps that are applicable, and you'll be connecting directly through tokens and secret keys. Okay. I'm going to switch back to my other site. Okay, so now if we look at some of the 2022 releases that are available to you guys, and we're going to start off with the GL transactions. And here, previously, we couldn't actually do an approval on when a journal was posted to the GL. Here, we're wanting the ability to prevent certain GLs from hitting our, journals from hitting our GL until they've been investigated and looked at. And we can set these up. So under our preferences, very same thing, we always have the approval tab, and we can set up different approvals based on the type of document as well. So here I've created just a general normal journal, but I could go in and say if it's a reclassification that it needs to go through a specific approval. Okay. Or if it was an allocation which the system had created and I wanted to make sure that it didn't affect my GL until somebody had gone in and checked that the allocation was correct. Okay. But for my example, I'm just going to use a simple journal. And my journal says anything that is posted to my long service account, so anything that's posted to 00510 needs to go to me for approval. Now we do have additional settings here for the reason settings. And these are also quite helpful in letting the user know what's actually why an approval was approved or rejected. And I do have a couple of options available to me here. I can say, is it optional? So can the user or the approver put in a reason or no reason? If it is required, so if I do it on a rejection, do I want the user to actually specify why they're rejecting this particular journal? And if not prompted, it doesn't necessarily need to be filled in. Again, these can be applicable to different levels, and I have different settings per level within the approval. So one of my staff members has come in and they've created this journal. So I've created the journal, I can see the journal. Okay. When I look at it, it hasn't been approved yet, or it's not in an approval status yet because it's still on hold. When I come in and go remove from hold, I can see now it needs to go to me for approval. And I'm going to look at the journal and I'm going to say, but hang on, it's the wrong amount, or it needs to be corrected to a different account, and I'm going to reject it. When I reject it, I can now specify why I'm rejecting it. Okay. And I can say that, hang on, this is the wrong account, and I can reject it with a reason. Okay. So now that user can understand what's wrong, come in, correct it, and resend it for approval. Okay. Right. In 22, we have also got a new generic inquiry or inquiry screen, which allows us to calculate our turnover of stock. Okay. It will also calculate the average inventory for a selected period, and also go in and calculate the number of days that it would take to turn over that average inventory into sales. And that's located under our inventory, and we've got an inventory turnover generic inquiry. Okay. This generic inquiry will ask me for a couple of settings at the top, or a couple of filters that I can do. I can specify the branch that I want to run it for. Okay. I can select a period, a to and a from period. So let me just put in this financial year. And if the turnover had been calculated, it would immediately show me the last results. If I had selected a different period, and let's just do it as 12025, I would get an alert telling me to hang on, I need to calculate. I can do this directly on the screen, so I would select my period and hit calculate, and all it would do is go through and calculate based on a couple of settings. Okay. If I go into my previous screen, okay, and I look at some of my calculations here, I can see my beginning inventory in value and in units. Okay, so that's for this particular period. I can also see that my ending value in dollars and in units, as well as my average value over this period. I can then see my cost of goods sold and how many have actually been sold, and a turnover ratio and the number of days it would take to convert these remaining stock into inventory. Okay. I can go in and just do it by specific items or item class. I can also go in and select multiple items. So if I was going to select specific items in a list, sorry, let's just go back here, take that out, and I can add items to a list. And you can see in the background, it's adding the items for me based on that list. Okay. I do also have the ability to upload from an Excel file. Right. So it gives me the ability to now look at my turnover, see where my business is going with regards to turnover of stock and which items are sort of doing well and how much stock I'm holding. Do I need to decrease my orders? That kind of information. Okay. Right. When as a business, I may decide to sort of purchase in stock for my own internal business. So I might be looking at, I run an office shop that sells printers and toners and cartridges and things like that. But I also, customers have started to ask me to bring in paper or bring in additional toners. So I've purchased them as non-stock items and I've created them in my system as a non-stock item. And I've now evaluated those items. So these are my items that I've purchased and I've been using them as internals or I've been prototyping them against our equipment. And I can see, hang on, these are actually viable and there is a demand for my customer to have a toner with their cartridge. Okay. We now have the ability to take this non-stock item and create a stock item from it. So instead of having to recreate these items every time we get a new item or we're testing a new item, I can then take the existing item and create it into a stock item. So it's taking away that unnecessary step of creating a new item, filling in all the details. Here, we're just converting that item. Okay. So if I look at this particular toner, and under my message, under my actions option or my ellipsis, I now have the convert to stock item. I am on the non-stock items. If I was on the stock item screen, I would see the convert to non-stock. So when I select the convert option, it refreshes the screen, it changes it to a stock item, and it asks me to fill in some of the mandatory fields that are applicable to stock items. So I can go in and specify that this is going to fall under my accessories. And if I was going to change my posting class, so this was my office supplies class, and save. And now this item has been removed from my stock items, of my non-stock items, into my stock item. And I can now use this in a sale to a customer. I can do the same in reverse. If I no longer want to sell it, or it's going to be an item that's going to be stopped by a supplier, I can change this to a non-stock item and convert it back. And again, it does the same thing. It takes it to a non-stock item and it says just complete the last bit. So it's a non-stock item, still under office supplies. And okay, and now it's back to a non-stock item. I can also do this through a bulk processing screen. Okay, so under my inventory, I have the change stock status of items. And here I can now go and select an action. So if I had selected convert non-stock to stock, I can see the list of all my stock, my non-stock items, and there are the 2 items that I would like to move across. Okay. With this screen, because I'm doing multiples, it's asking me to select some of the settings that are applicable to the new stock item that I'm going to create. Okay, so I want these all to fall under my office supplies. And I'm going to put it all under my office supplies. Okay, I would tick the items that I want to convert and select process. And MYOB will then go in and move those from a non-stock item to a stock item. And again, I can do the same thing backwards. I can move in a stock item to a non-stock item. On the last point that I have to cover today is we have some of the payroll enhancements that are being made, and this is applicable to any of the payroll users that we have. And we now have some onboarding features that are available, as well as some advanced workforce management that is going to help you get the best out of the payroll side of things. I don't unfortunately have a little bit of a demo here, but it is something that is available to you, and if you would like to use it, just reach out to us.